Vladimir Putin likes to present himself as a strong leader that has absolute control over Russia and fears no one. But this isn't really the case. There is a man he fears so much that he can't even say his name.
По поводу персонажей, которых вы упомянули.
Этот господин оседлал очень модную тему борьбы с коррупцией.
Зачем нам такие клоуны? Гражданина, о котором вы упомянули. Касается, значит, этого пациента, значит, в берлинской клинике.
That man is Alexei Navalny, the leader of the Russian opposition, the man who the Russian authorities try to kill. And after they failed, sent him to prison. Alexei Navalny's political career began in the mid-90s. He exposed corruption in Russian state corporations. He purchased their shares and therefore obtained access to the company's internal documents. This made him popular, both in the media and on the internet. He was even called the Russian Julian Assange in the American press.
Привет, это Алексей Навальный, и вы присутствуете при эксперименте. Мы решили делать самый настоящий такой интерактивный видеоблог.
Navalny's main platform came from social media. 6 million subscribers on YouTube, 3 million on Instagram, hundreds of thousands on Twitter, Telegram, and TikTok. With television being heavily censored, Russians, especially the young, began to go to the internet for political content. And while for any developed democracy this is now commonplace, in Russia, Navalny is a pioneer. Vladimir Putin, according to widespread reports, does not use the internet at all. In 2011, Vladimir Putin announced that he would run for a third term as president and rig the parliamentary elections. Navalny was one of the main organizers of the protests against this electoral fraud. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets all over Russia, and Navalny became the face of the protest. The largest protest rallies in modern Russian history did not result in a change of power. Vladimir Putin entered his third presidential term, and repression reached a new level. Meanwhile, Alexei Navalny decided to run for mayor of Moscow. The authorities understood that he was dangerous, and criminal charges were brought against him. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. There was a rally in Moscow against this verdict. And Navalny was released from prison. He took part in the elections and won more than 27% of the vote. Considering the widespread censorship, the administrative resources of the pro-Kremlin candidate Sobyanin, and the government's monopoly on state media, the opposition considered this a success.
Alexei Navalny.
Navalny would wait 5 years for the next election. In the meantime, the number of views on his YouTube investigations was growing, and people were getting even more familiar with the subjects of his investigations. After exposing the corruption of Prosecutor General Chaika and Deputy Minister Shuvalov, Navalny moved all the way up to former President Medvedev. His video, "He is not demand to you," broke records in terms of views on Russian YouTube and attracted a new, younger audience to the protests.
Уважаемые граждане, данное мероприятие незаконно и не санкционировано с органами исполнительной власти.
Отдайте мне мою страну! Отдайте мне мою страну!
What made these rallies different is that they are not just held in Moscow, but all over the country. Navalny was now a federal politician.
Я приму участие в борьбе за пост президента России. Неудивительно, ведь настоящих выборов в России не было с 1996 года, и это одна из причин нашего бедственного положения.
At the end of 2016, Navalny announced that he wanted to be president and planned to run in 2018. The Kremlin could not afford to allow an out-of-control candidate rapidly growing in popularity to run for president. The risks were too great, as his campaign for mayor of Moscow has shown. Navalny was denied registration. Nevertheless, he created a structure of regional offices and set up headquarters all over the country. And he came to meet his comrades in arms. In every city, he was greeted by thousands of people. There were now opposition organizations in 81 different cities, holding rallies, investigating regional corruption, and helping activists. A few years later, the Russian authorities would declare Navalny's network of headquarters to be an extremist organization and ban it. The authorities failed to stop Navalny. His popularity was still growing. So in the summer of 2020, they decided to poison him.
Это экстренный выпуск новостей.
Политика Алексея Навального госпитализировали в Омске. Ему стало плохо на борту авиакомпании S7, когда он летел из Томска в Москву. Экстренно самолет сел в Омске, и его доставили в больницу.
Нам отказываются отдать Алексея, чтобы отправить. Мы считаем, конечно, что это сделано для того, чтобы то химическое вещество, которое находится в организме Алексея, исчезло. Поэтому его, конечно, не выдают, чтобы эти остатки этого вещества исчезли.
Navalny fell into a coma. The doctors at the Omsk hospital, where he was rushed from the plane, would not let his wife Yulia in. Russian propaganda suggested the following theories: metabolic disorders, alcohol poisoning, and a drop in blood sugar levels. 2 days later, and after a personal appeal from Yulia to Vladimir Putin, the doctors allowed the politician to be transported to the Charité clinic in Berlin. Navalny regained consciousness after 2.5 weeks. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons concluded that the politician was poisoned with a nerve agent Novichok. Much like former Russian intelligence agent Sergei Skripal in 2018 in Salisbury. After making a recovery, Navalny teamed up with international media to conduct the most important investigation of his life and named those who tried to kill him.
Я знаю, кто хотел меня убить. Я знаю, где они живут, я знаю, где они работают, я знаю их настоящие имена, я знаю их поддельные имена. У меня есть их фотографии.
And CNN anchor Clarissa Ward managed to find one of Navalny's poisoners in Moscow.
Здравствуйте, Олег Борисович, да? Меня зовут Clarissa Ward. Я работаю в CNN. My name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Can I ask you a couple of questions? Можно вам спрашивать, это ваша команда отравила Навальный? Was it your team that poisoned Navalny, please?
In Moscow, all accusations of an attempted murder of Navalny were denied. 4 months later, Navalny announced his return to Russia, despite the threat of criminal prosecution. Thousands of supporters gathered at Vnukovo airport, but on its approach to the capital, the plane was turned around and ended up landing at another Moscow airport, Sheremetyevo. These were Navalny's last minutes as a free man. The next day, a video uncovering a palace, allegedly belonging to Vladimir Putin, appeared on Navalny's YouTube channel. This was the first video investigating the corruption of the president on this scale. It now has 127 million views.
Это расследование мы придумали еще когда я находился в реанимации, но сразу договорились о том, что выпустим мы его только когда я вернусь домой, в Россию, в Москву, потому что мы не хотим, чтобы главный герой этого фильма думал о том, что мы его боимся, и самый преданный поклонник нашего творчества, по приказу которого меня отравили, Владимир Путин, вот он точно смотрит сейчас, и сердечко его сжимается от ностальгии.
Navalny is jailed in an expedited manner, first for 2 years and 8 months. Then, when he's already in prison, another 9 years are added for a supposed fraud case. They kept printing new charges and make it clear that he will remain in prison for as long as Putin remains in charge. Navalny sat in jail as Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. He now makes anti-war political statements during his trial hearings. And right at the end of the first year of the war, he published his proposal, or plan, for a post-war and post-Putin Russia. In April 2023, more than 100 major global figures appealed to the Russian authorities, demanding the immediate release of Navalny. Among the signatories were Nobel laureates Orhan Pamuk and Svetlana Alexievich, writers J.K. Rowling and Anne Applebaum, actors Jude Law and Benedict Cumberbatch. A few days later, there was a new criminal case being brought against him. Alexei Navalny was being investigated on charges of terrorism and now faces life in prison.